Hello Internet, welcome to the Collective Arcana, a channel all about tabletop gaming. So in honor of the most wonderful time of the year, I decided we should do a Halloween episode. So I found something to print on Thingiverse and I thought we would just do the whole thing together from start to finish. So I looked up just some D&D terrain and stuff for our game, and it's my familiar, Luna. And I found this really awesome monster, which I've actually already printed, but it was from a creator called DUTCHMOGUL, and I'm going to put a link in the description so you can check him out. Very cool. He actually provides like the stat blocks for the monster with the files. It just looked like a really fun thing for Halloween, so I went ahead and printed it. I did not follow instructions and didn't read his description where he says that you don't need supports, and I printed it with supports. That goes to show you should be more responsible than me, because that would have saved me some plastic. But even with the supports, it wasn't very many that auto-generated. I was just using Cura. I have a Ender 3 printer, just FDM. I actually kind of wanted to print this fast, so I did it in a lower resolution than, I could have done it much higher resolution. So I just did a 0.2, and it came out really good even with the lower resolution. So what we're going to do is we're just going to zoom in here and do this start to finish, and I'll show you how to paint it. And I'm going to try to do this sort of quick because I'm sure if you're watching this, Halloween is pretty soon, so your Halloween game, if you're doing it, is pretty soon, so you probably don't want to spend a ton of time on this. I also printed some extra tree stumps for this terrain, so let me go ahead and give you the Thingiverse artist for that. So a couple of the tree stumps are the ones that are fallen that we'll be looking at. They're called Log for Gloomhaven, and the creator is ROBAGON. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but again, I'll link it below. And then the last one I printed was actually from DUTCHMOGUL as well, and it was under the file called Dagger Trees. It's actually got one big cool tree, but there was also a stump, so I just did the stump for time's sake. But I do also want to do the full-size tree because it's pretty cool. So let's just jump right into it and get these bad boys painted. Okay, so like I told you, I didn't follow the instructions and I used supports. Another disclaimer is I'm too lazy to fix my printer settings so that I can get rid of the stringing because I just don't really care about it that much right now. I'm just too busy to care because it doesn't seem to mess up the prints. But there's a ton of channels out there that can help you troubleshoot your printer, and I should probably check those out at some point. But for now, like I said, you didn't actually need to use supports for this guy. So we're just gonna pop those off now. I imagine this part will be sped up, so I'm gonna go ahead and just tell you, so I'm just using the pliers that came with my printer. They were just for cutting the filament, but I just use scissors for that, and then I use these to take supports off because they're actually pretty sharp, so I can just cut instead of breaking it off, and if I'm worried about like a delicate part breaking off. And I know I've said this a couple of times, but you don't need supports for this, so I just made a lot of work for myself. Okay, this dude is super cool. Look at him. I think he looks pretty good considering I did the lower resolution. I just really needed to get him done fast because I knew I wanted to do this video today while I had time, and he had to take a little while to print because he's so big. So I just did that lower resolution, and plus I knew he was just going to be in one game. I think if he was going to be a reoccurring monster, I might have done a higher resolution and been more patient, but that's kind of the point of having a 3D printer, is you can just do stuff last minute like this. So what I like to do is take these like metal files, I think they're for jewelry, I got them on Amazon, and I like to just sand these sharp edges down a little bit. And you can see it gives it a, just to get some of those sharp spots off. So we're just going to do that really fast and clean up some of these edges, and I'm going to speed it up so that, because I don't think you'll be able to hear me talking over it. But just a couple of tips for this. I love these little files, and I usually take the edge of them and sort of scrape and then file. So that gets it cleaned up pretty nice. It's just one of those things you have to do, and you kind of get the hang of it on your own, but that's just a little tip. So there wasn't a ton to remove because it didn't actually need support, so it was pretty quick to clean up. I do want to clean up these teeth a little bit, and also wanted to mention, in case you're wondering, I think this is the Hatchbox brand of filament, and it's in silver because I really wanted gray and all they had was silver in stock. I don't know, I haven't really tried any other brand yet. But that one seems to work really well with the ender. I haven't had any problems with it. We've gone through several rules of it. I did notice that I like the gray because it's sort of a good neutral color. I used to prefer the black, but then I started printing things that I wanted brighter colors on. And I don't always prime these guys. I was going to prime him, but I might not. I actually have a couple of other things I want to print, and I don't want to print them while I'm filming because the printer's kind of loud in the other room. So I see a little chunk of plastic here, and I'm just going to snip it off, shape up this tooth a little bit. So if I really wanted this to look amazing and I wanted to put in all the effort possible for it, like just do my very, very best job on it, there are a whole bunch of things that I would do that I'm going to be skipping for this tutorial because, you know, this guy, he's going to be in one game and he's going to be on a shelf most of the time. This isn't one of my display monsters that'll be on the shelf year-round, that kind of thing. Like I did do extra work on the beholder that I printed because I knew that would be on display in our house. But this guy, I mean, he's for Halloween, so, you know, I won't have to look at him all year, so I'm just going to try to get him done. But one of the things I would do if I wanted him to be just as good as I could get him is I would take some Milliput and I would build up these teeth so that they're really sharp. And I would probably also just, something I like to do is cover up these layer lines with Milliput. Basically just sort of wet it down and smash it in here and smooth all this out, especially in these top high places. I am going to sand it a little bit. The layer lines aren't such a big deal, especially for people who don't 3D print. They don't even notice them. It just looks like funky texture to them. But when you 3D print, you know, you can't not see them. But you'll notice a lot of these models, like it really works with the design. Like on the leaves here, it just looks like texture. On dungeon tiles, it looks completely just like texture. It looks great. So, and that's also true for these tree stumps that we're going to look at next. But honestly, I think he's pretty much ready to go. So, like I was saying, if I was going to do the best job possible on him, I would Milliput some of these layer lines and smooth them out. I know some people use like urethane, and I tried that and I didn't notice a big enough difference to keep doing it. There are some different sprays with like fillers and stuff like that in them. Definitely look into that. That is not my area of expertise. I'm mostly here to show you how to paint stuff, so I'll link a channel below that I like to use when I'm not being lazy and looking into this stuff. That channel's called 3D Printed Tabletop, and he's got really good videos on how to fine-tune your printer, especially if you have an ender. So He's even got some profiles I think you can download for the high def prints and stuff like that. And that's something else, like I said, I would have printed in a higher resolution. So I would Milliput, sharpen up these teeth, you know, layer lines, smooth those out. But we're gonna skip all that and move ahead. And another thing I would do is I would prime this. And I've been using this for a primer and I'm really happy with it. Oh, it might be backwards. And I'll link this too, but it does a great job. I think it might be for like an airbrush, but I just use it straight out of the bottle and it's good stuff. I'm not gonna do that with this guy, again, because I'm in a hurry, but I've painted these before without the primer and they do great. Like I haven't had any chipping or anything like that, and I will seal it after, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip the primer today for this guy. Here are the little tree stumps that I did. So I just laid them out in 3. These are actually the same file. This one, and I just resized them in Cura, so that one was a little bit bigger just to give it some variety. And then this guy was by the same creator that did the pumpkin, so definitely goes, the style definitely matches. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean these up too. Let's go ahead and yank this off so you can see it. I love that. It looks so like whimsical and very Feywild. Big fan of that. And then these, I love these too. I've printed these up actually already. I have a couple of these and they were so fast to paint. The texture really works on, the layer line texture really works for these. So I figured we'd just throw these in too in this video just because they are so quick. It's just, you know, paint, wash, dry brush, call it a day. But these are cool because you can just do all different sizes. And I believe they have a Patreon as well. So I'll link this below. So I'm just gonna clean these up, finish taking this brim off, and then I'm going to wash them. So I wash all minis, whether they're printed or store-bought or whatever. I always like to wash them because you never know what oils on your own hands you have. Like I have lotions and hair products I know on my hands, so no matter what, I always wash the mini before I paint it, just so that I can make sure it sticks. And again, use a primer if you're really worried about that. I'm skipping that step because I'm in a hurry, because I think I'm also going to try some blacklight paint today. So I'm gonna see if I can crank out a couple of videos for you. I can't have glow-in-the-dark nails and not do a glow-in-the-dark video. Okay, so he's out of the bubble bath, nice and clean. I just want to mention a couple of things before I start. The first thing is, if it bothers you to watch a very messy person, then this is probably going to be painful for you, because I'm a very messy painter. I use my hand as a palette. I just always have, and I don't plan on changing that. So, I'm sorry if that's annoying, but just a heads up. It will probably get all over the table too, and I don't care because I can just clean it up. It's just paint. The second thing I want to mention is, I know a lot of people are faithful to their paint brands, and I just want to say I'm not one of those people, and I use all sorts of different paints. And for this, I'm going to use the big, evil, dreaded craft store paint. And I know a lot of people have opinions about this stuff, but I've been working with it for years, and I don't know, it works for me. It's just folk art. Oh, focus. It's just this like folk art brand, and I mean, I've painted stuff with it that, you know, is 20 years old now, and it the color holds up. It hasn't chipped, so I don't really know why people don't like it, but you can use your fancy paints, or you can just use these. I do like to use these for big monster type things because it does use so much paint, and you know, the more expensive paint, it's very expensive for a very little bit of paint. And I actually believe that these blend better. I just like them. So just putting that out there. More power to you if you want to use something different, but just focus on the actual colors and you can color match from there. I'm not going to use specific colors or anything like that. So we're going to start with our pumpkin dude here. And I'm going to go ahead and put him on, this is just like some little wooden thingy-majigger that I got. And I like to use these for like handles. This is a poster tack from the Dollar Tree. I don't know, we'll see how long he stays up on this because sometimes I get tired of fighting with it and then I end up taking it off. But okay, so here is, I'm just going to show you on my phone. Here's the picture from Thingieverse. So we'll kind of use this as a guide of how we want to color it. I think the only thing I'm going to change is making the inside of his mouth and eyes and stuff, you know, make it look like it's glowing yellow like a jack-o'-lantern. This kind of, the colors they use kind of looks like it's magic. So that looks pretty cool too. The only question is, if I do that, is what kind of, what colored teeth am I gonna do so they'll stand out? We could do just like normal teeth color, I guess. So I'm just gonna paint him all over orange. So you could say we're priming him with orange. So we'll probably have to do a couple of coats of this because it's a lighter color. This is one reason I didn't want to prime in, because my primer is black. I really need to get some gray primer. I keep meaning to do that and I keep forgetting. I want to get gray, white, and, well, I have black. And if I had all those colors, I would have just primed them in white so that this orange would stand out better. But let's work with what we got and not worry too much about it. And because this is a lighter color and I'm kind of painting everything with it, I'm not really too worried about being neat here. I'm just getting it all over stuff, even stuff that's not supposed to be orange because it's just going to get painted over anyway, and there's no point in spending a whole bunch of time, you know, fighting with it. I will say, I just told you about how I don't care too much about the brands of paint. There are some bad craft store paints, obviously. There's one called like Apple something, I don't know, it's just awful, but the folk art one does really well. This is the Americana brand and it's sort of hit or miss. I need to get orange in the folk art brand because as you can see, this orange is sort of kind of thin, not very pigmented. Okay, so I was really struggling with that that orange I was using, so I just made some with the folk art brand because this was the Americana brand, but it was just not covering anything. So you really see the layer lines in this. I think the Milliput would have done a lot of covering and smoothing. But you know, on the table it's probably not going to look all that different, so I'm not going to stress about it. I can keep adding layers and layers, but unless he's dry, they're just going to keep lifting on me. So let's move on to our tree stumps here. So for the tree stumps, we're just going to go just super brown, just the most brownish brown you can find. Don't want to do anything too dark here because I'm going to be ink washing it, and we're also going to do, you know, some dry brushing and stuff like that. So just a good old standard brown. These are so easy to paint. Like, I just kind of want to print a whole bunch of them because they're so quick. There's a couple little tricks I can show you too to make these look a little more realistic really quickly. So we'll do that as we work on them. But essentially, I mean, this is just going to be Just a flat color and then a wash and some dry brush, and then I'll probably do one more wash of a kind of a green to make it look more realistic. Just slapping it on there. Last one, and then I'll clean up my big mess that I made. I should move my paint so I'm not putting my hand in front of the camera so much. Another reason I'm on a time crunch is because, so we went to Ren Fair last weekend, and I did a little video on that if you want to check it out. And then next month we have the Critical Role live show, and it's in Austin, so it's going to be a bit of a drive because we're in Houston. And then also last weekend was my birthday, so we were busy with that. And then Wyatt's birthday is next month, and then of course holidays, so it's just been a little hectic, and of course trying to get this channel going and everything. So sometimes you just have to sacrifice the quality of your 3D printed one-offs to make room for other things. So alright, so I'm painting the inside of his eyes now. It's still trying to dry. It feels like it's never gonna dry. Oops. Now I'm getting impatient as usual. Okay, so I know you can't really see what I'm doing because the camera's on the wrong side, but basically I'm just pulling out. See if I can do it in hopes that the paint will catch on these layer lines a little bit. So I'm starting from the center and pulling outward. So since you can't really see what I'm doing anyway, I'm just gonna go ahead and paint all this up and come back. I will say I think this would be going a lot better if I had primered. So if you have it, at the very least I would go ahead and do a primer inside of the mouth and the eyes, because it's just really having a hard time sticking in there. And I'm having a hard time getting it to dry. So I'm gonna go ahead and fight with this for a while and come back and not make you suffer through it with me, since you can't really see from my angle anyway. So I'll be back. Alright, so I layered up that yellow and the orange, just got some base coats, nothing fancy. And now I'm just gonna start building up the inside of the mouth. I'm gonna use a lighter yellow and start building out that glow inside of the mouth. So kind of where I'm at here is I've had some difficulty building this yellow up in general. It's just, you know, I should have primed. I regret it. Learn from my mistakes. So I'm just gonna add some of this like super light yellow into the center of the mouth here. See if we can just get some color in there, lighten it up. And you'll notice I did this yellow all over the place. Because I was thinking, like, so the pumpkin is, you know, the inside of a pumpkin is this sort of gold yellow that I'm like painting all over now, but it'll work. You'll see. But so I was thinking the teeth might be kind of growing out of that. So maybe the root of the tooth can be sort of that yellow, and then we'll have it like blend out to white, you know, like a plaquey, you know, bone color, just a normal tooth color. But I like the idea that it used to be a part of the pumpkin and it like grew out of it. And that's really the best way to pick colors for stuff like this, is just kind of think about it like rationally. If it was real, how these parts would come out and grow. And so for an example, I'm working on Grog right now, the miniature, and he's supposed to have sort of this like stony colored skin, and I've seen a couple of different versions of how people painted him, and a lot of people are doing either white or blue, but he's supposed to be kind of like gray, right, because he's like stone. So if you think about that, Grog still bleeds red blood, right? And so my theory behind that is he should have sort of a purple tint rather than blue. So I kind of use this. It's still very gray, but it's like, it's got a purple tint to it. So anyway, just kind of think about stuff like that when you're choosing colors. So yeah, I'm not trying to stay in the lines or anything here. I'm just trying to get coverage at this point, because all this is going to get covered up anyway. So let's let him dry, and let's go back to our little wooden logs here. Okay, so for these wood pieces, let's just do a black ink wash. And as you know, that's just black paint thinned out. And so see, that looks like straight black, but it's actually pretty watery. And I'm going to spread it out some more here in a second. Probably should have thinned up more. So I'm doing kind of a heavy wash here on purpose, because I'm not gonna dip my paint in, my brush in the paint again. I'm just gonna work with what's on here. I will say, black washing 3D printed things, I mean, it does show the layer lines, which is not the best, but I mean, we're gonna work around that. There's some things we can do to make them less noticeable. But at the same time, doing this is a great way to make them more noticeable. So I'm just dipping my brush in more water. And, oops, moving this around. Get my lights a little. I mean, in some places the layer lines look great and they work, but in other places it's when they're more uniform and they don't look like they should belong there, you know, they make it look like a 3D printed part. But so as you can see, I'm just letting the wash do its thing and settle in uneven places on purpose. That's why I kind of did it heavy, because I don't want it to be uniform. So let's go ahead and do that with the others. So I'm just going to add more water. Now these parts, these, I'm sorry, I keep calling them parts. These logs, they do so good with the wash. It's like they were just designed perfectly for it. Like you just don't notice the layer lines because they look like wood grain. Something also, I know it looks dark, but it always dries a little bit lighter. So this was why I also wanted to use that very basic brown color, because if you use a dark color and then you ink wash it, it just becomes too dark. And then this way, you know, you're darkening up that brighter brown in it, and it kind of works together. So here you can see it like pulls out the knot. Looks awesome. Okay, so from this step you have a couple of options. I'm gonna try something that I don't know if it's gonna work, and if it doesn't, it's gonna look really bad, so let's hope it works. But I'm gonna try to do like a bright bloody red and wash it in there just to get some colors going. So let's see what happens. I mostly am worried about the corners and the edges than I am the middle. And of course, I'm not too worried about the teeth because I'm gonna be changing those. So here's where you have some choices to make. You can do, if you wanna do like a fire glow like I'm gonna go for here, you can do these reds and oranges. But if you wanna do something more like what's in the picture, you can start adding your greens up here. This would be a great time to start doing some like bright appley greens, and then you can build up to like limey greens. If you want it to look more magic, you can do any, like you can do purple, like whatever you want to do. It just depends on, you know, what effect you're going for. I'm just doing something a little more traditional. So for the eyes, I'm just kind of adding it in here just so that it'll, I don't know, I just didn't want it to be a flat color. So I'm just gonna add the yellow back in, but I just wanted to make it more interesting, I guess. I don't usually know what I'm gonna do with paint until I get in there. I'm noticing with these eyes, it's better to like kind of dip in and pull straight out so that it can catch on the layers. All right, so I want to start getting these teeth separated out. I know my hand looks bloody. So I'm going to use this sort of flesh color. It's like a very pale flesh tone. I'm going to start working on the teeth with it. And what I'm going to do is, my idea is that they're regular tooth colored teeth, but they're coming out of this, like the meat of the pumpkin. So I'm going to do like a gradient from the white down to the yellow. So let's clean these up. I like using little brushes for stuff like this, obviously. I'm actually breaking all the rules today and not thinning out the paint because of the layer lines. This is not a smooth finish at all. So I don't mind that it looks a little textured to maybe distract from that. Because as you can see, like you can see the lines with these lighter colors. But we're gonna, after we get this painted up, we're gonna do some highlights and hopefully distract from that. And that's why I'm using this fleshy color. Because if we did the whole thing white from here, we wouldn't have any way to highlight it. So we have to be able to work up from something. All right, to save some time, I'm just gonna go ahead and do this really fast. I won't make you sit and watch, so I will be back. So I've got these teeth all painted up. Got them nice and white, fleshy white. And now I'm gonna take this like dandelion kind of yellow color, and I'm gonna start putting the meat of the inside of the pumpkin back in. So let me see if I can do it like this. So I am using a smaller brush here. And while I'm still kind of being sloppy in some spots, it's time to start getting a little bit neater with you know, just like around the teeth and stuff. So here we're covering up a lot of that red spillage we had when we did the ink wash. But it'll still be there enough to sort of show through and make it glowy effect in the back, especially behind the teeth. I have sort of this like tan color I'm going to start putting in at the root of the tooth. I don't know if it's going to be dark enough. I might have to darken it a little bit. Just so we can get some separation between the meat of the tooth and the tooth itself. Okay, so I'm going to go back in after I did that brown. Just go back in and highlight some more of that, clean up some of the yellow that I didn't want to be brown. And this is a good place where the brown is still kind of wet, so I can kind of wet blend it while I do this, while I touch it up. And so I'm adding that dandelion back in. All right. So let's go back over with the white and lighten those little teeth up. Because right now they all sort of blend in with the mouth and it's kind of messy. So now I'm going to be a little more careful. So here, first I'll just paint it. And then I'm going to see if I can blend this out a little bit. So it's a bit more of a gradient. Oops. And to do that, I'm just gonna, after I lay the color down, just sort of control how much I lift back up at the gradient, where the gradient starts. And let that yellow show through. So I've done one tooth here, this one. And then what I'll do is I'll take white, and just to kind of throw the eye off a little bit from those layer lines, I'm just gonna draw it straight line up. Right in the dead center, the highest point, just to sort of break stuff up. And so that's how I'm gonna do all the teeth. These teeth look a little too white to me. This one, I've only done the one. So what I think I'm gonna do is, after I get everything painted like this tooth, I'm gonna take just a really thinned out brown wash and just wash the teeth with it and see if that helps sort of tone it down a little bit, because I don't think this guy's been, you know, like brushing his teeth every day. It's just a little tricky because the whole mouth is yellow and orange, and so you don't want it to blend all in. And that might be why they chose to do green instead of reds and yellows and stuff inside. But we can make it work. That's half the challenge. Finding ways to make things contrast when maybe they don't so easily contrast. So we're gonna move on from his mouth, but first let's go ahead and finish the trees up since they're dry. This is where I get really messy, because I use this giant makeup brush that I had from some foundation thing a while back, and I use it for dry brushing now, and it's perfect for these. So I'm gonna use a light tan color. Let's see. And I'm gonna be super annoying about it and put it all over my hand here. My big palette. And pick it up there, and we'll start with this guy and just lightly dry brush. Doesn't take much, and the black's all settled into the knots and stuff, so it looks pretty cool. And that's why these are so fast, because the layer lines really work with you. Grab the top here. So there's with and without the dry brush. My camera died, but I dry brushed this. And these are really fine the way they are. But one extra thing we can do is to take this like foresty green color and just do a quick wash with it. So you just take this green and thin it out really good. And I'm just gonna do an ink wash with it. I'm not even gonna do it all over. I'm just gonna do it on the top like it's moss or something's growing. And then just make sure you kind of pull out the excess. You don't want a lot, or it'll just mess it all up. This bright green goes a long way, so you don't need very much. This is a really good effect for if you're doing docks, like wooden docks that are sitting in water, to do this sort of halfway up the posts of it, where it looks like it's just been sitting and stuff's been growing on it. It's like way too much. So I'm gonna water that down. On this one, I'm probably just gonna do the tops and then just where it looks like the sun might hit. I'm actually gonna dab some of this up too, which I usually do. I didn't do that on the other ones, but just where the sun hits. So it's not all over, it's just here and there. I want it to look a little inconsistent. And so those are done. All right, so I'm on a major time crunch right now, so I'm gonna just kind of rush on through this because it's pretty self-explanatory from here. You know, just the same old build your highlights and your shadows and all that stuff. So we'll just speed on through here and I'll give you tips as I go. So for the vines, we're just going to do a very similar thing as to what we did with the stumps. And I'm going to use that green wash to sort of blend these leaves in. And you can see, like, it doesn't take much with that green, so that'll be a really easy gradient to do. Same with the stem, because the stem is, you know, green when it's healthy and brown when it's dead, so you can sort of play around with that green wash and get some different effects with it. And what I'm doing is I'm just going through and laying this down so I can work on other stuff while this dries and come back to it. So, and I'll probably use this green to also blend in the brown into the pumpkin itself here on the stem. All right, so let's get back to this orange that I've been fighting with. So I'm going to go back and clean up all the mess I made here. So if I had more time, I would do some like glowy effects here so that it looks like the eyes are glowing. But I have about an hour to finish this, so I'm gonna just get rolling here. I just mixed up some more orange. It's not an exact match, but it doesn't matter because it's just gonna be highlighted and shadowed here in a second anyway. And also I kind of do that on purpose so that there's more variations to it. Things in nature aren't just a solid color all over, so it looks more natural when it's got some variety. So I put more red in this one. So I do wish more yellow was showing here. I might have to do some glowy effects after all. What I'll probably do is just take the dry brush to it after everything's all the way dry, because I really kind of liked how that looked in theory. As I'm finishing up this orange coat here, might be a good time for me to beg you for your subscribe now. It really helps us. We are working really hard to make stuff that you guys like, but we're still kind of learning what kind of videos you all are looking for, so just let us know what you're interested in. We pretty much just do all things D&D all the time anyway, so it's just a matter of when we turn the camera on or not. It's basically all we talk about in this house. We have 2 games, and I'm trying to learn how to DM one, which should be interesting. I'm not sure how that's gonna go. Mostly I just want to be able to say that I did it, you know? And that I know how to do it. Okay. So, I'm going to just go around the edge here. Because it looked better, I think. And then after I lay it down, I'm just going to clean my brush. And I'm going to try to wet blend it out so it's not like... Get some of that orange back in there to do this part. Yeah, I think that looks better. Just trying to make it more pumpkin-y. So I'm gonna do a wash now. So I have a couple of options. I could do dark brown or sort of this reddish brown. I'm gonna do the dark brown. Where'd it go? It keeps running away. So I'm gonna start here at the stem. And I'm gonna just concentrate on dragging it down these dudes. All right, we dirtied up the pumpkin a little bit, made him look a little more real. And obviously we'll go back with the orange, but start laying color down on these leaves. I am using a very small brush right here just because I'm trying to get up beside the pumpkin. But I'll switch to a larger brush after that. This is again the same green that I used for the mossy wash. Alright, so we're just gonna wrap this up because it's pretty repetitive from here. So I'm just gonna show you sort of what I'm gonna be doing for the rest of it, and then I'll just show you the after. But I'm just gonna go through with that orange and highlight these high spots. That yellowy orange we made for highlights. And I'm doing this really lightly, just very light hand, and just think about where the sun would hit. Just avoiding those sort of, where the dents are, you know. So I'll just talk you through the leaves and the vines, because I think I'm gonna run out of memory soon on my camera, and I have to get this bad boy done today because we have D&D tomorrow, and I have a dinner date soon. So basically what I'm gonna do is, for the vines, I'm gonna treat it just the way I did those stumps, and I'm gonna just do the black wash and all that stuff and the dry brush. And then for the leaves, I'm gonna do a wet blend to just kind of make those leaves look like they're coming out of the vine, you know, naturally, not like they're separate. And all you do for that is, like we did on the mouth, just, you know, do a wet blend with it. And it's really easy with that green. It's a lot easier with that green than it was with the red. That green is super easy to work with, and it really gets along with the brown. And then for the leaves, I just use that as the base color, and then I'll probably ink wash those as well, maybe with a dark brown. I don't know, play around with it. And then I'll probably highlight some spots, maybe even dry brush them with this lighter green that I have. It's sort of like a minty green. Or you could use like a yellow green. I might do that. So yeah, so I'll be doing those things to finish him. Maybe some little don't know. I gotta do something about those eyes because they're not really standing out as much as I wanted. So I'll probably put some more yellow there. But I will check back as soon as all that's done and you can see how it turned out. So I just added a couple of touch-ups and finished them up here. I did not do any dry brushing or ink washing just because I needed him so quickly. But maybe I'll do a tutorial where we print something out and we give it the nicest finish and paint job that we can. But I wanted to get this out in time for Halloween. So don't forget to like and subscribe. And I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next time.